Hi everyone, welcome to Wigan Fan TV. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined once again by Phil Wilkinson, sports editor of the Wigan Observer and Wigan Evening Post. Are you well, Phil?
Good, mate. Yeah, I can't see you. Probably a
Yeah.
technical problem on my part with this daft laptop, but so I'll try and keep with it.
So as with, I think it was Joe Mills last time we had the dogs barking in the background, just to sort of warn everyone that we might have a BBC News incident where Phil's going to see to his kids at some point. So if you see any kids in the background that sort of start dancing, don't be alarmed. Phil's child-minded tonight.
Phil has been a responsible grown-up.
Yeah, by talking about rugby. So, Phil, one of the reasons, I guess, why a lot of people are probably keen to hear from you tonight is that we're approaching round 3 for Wigan, and all of a sudden the rumour mill is going berserk from Frank Paul Nuuausala, John Bateman, Ryan Sutton, Zac Hardaker, Joe Greenwood's just popped up on my Twitter feed to ask a question. So, is there anywhere where you would like to start? Because I'm guessing you probably don't know the answers to a lot of them.
Well, yeah, it's been tough not being in Australia and being away from them for a while. But what was interesting was within the last hour, I've had a couple of emails and tweets and whatever in the last couple of days about Frank Paul. In the last hour, I've had a journalist in Australia email me saying he swears blind he's seen Frank Paul in Australia yesterday. So I'm going to ring him in, what is it, 6:30 or so in the next, probably after this, in the next hour or so, and just have a chat with him. If Frank Paul hadn't come back on that plane, I don't think anybody'd be surprised. I don't think. Do you? I mean, that story earlier this year, linking with that part-time Newcastle side, it was too random to just be speculation. You know, it's come from somewhere.
It's almost a perfect storm if you're in Frank Paul's situation. Wigan, obviously have a contract with him, but they were going over to Sydney, and we've obviously seen the photographs of Sutton and Bateman having conversations over there with Cronulla. It was almost. We had those rumours as well that you picked up on, Phil, with the Newcastle paper about his wife still being over there anyway.
Was she live there? Yeah, I spoke to the journalist who wrote that story, and although that story was a little off the mark at the time, as in the coach was probably been ill-advised and then spoke to the reporter who's then reported it. The bottom line was his family, his wife, his kid live over in Newcastle, I'm pretty sure Wigan wouldn't have stood in his way had he got a release to an NRL club, but he didn't at the end of last season, and he's got a contract. I mean, that's the other thing from Frank Paul's point of view. He's got a contract. You can't just bin players off,
no.
Unless you're going to pay them off. So I don't know whether, as I say, honestly, tonight I'll be chasing this up. It's been hard to chase up from a Wigan point of view. They got back just more than 24 hours ago. I've not
probably all in bed, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm going to say the sleep patterns are probably everywhere. They've not had a. I don't know if they've not arranged anyway, I don't think, a press conference for this week. We normally have one on a Wednesday. Hopefully there'll be one tomorrow and Thursday. So I'm certainly the questions will be asked and the picture will become clearer. Look, either way, I mean, I don't think anyone will be shocked if Frank Paul went. And the bottom line is, or if he'd already gone, the bottom line is if he does go, we know that we're going to are pretty tight on the salary cap, don't have much space to manoeuvre. If he goes, it obviously frees up some cash to look at strengthening the squad elsewhere.
Matt's put on, obviously, Phil, you can't see the screen, but Matt McCauley says, did Frank Paul's seat on the plane go to the trophy? Possibly.
Somebody corrected me on that, by the way. I pointed out, well, I'm sure a few people pointed out that the Shield said the first Super League game outside of the UK, and it should have said Europe. And somebody emailed me and said, no, you're wrong. The inscription actually said the first Super League game outside of the UK between Wigan and Hull. So,
all right, okay. So
anyone who's jumped on that is you stand corrected like I do.
Excellent. So I guess the rumour mill then from, I think the chances are Frank Paul, we don't know, but hopefully if people keep an eye on your Twitter and certainly read the Wigan Today website, you'll hopefully have an update on that over the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me, I just can't see how a bloke, I mean, anyone who's got wife, kid, to live on the other side of the world when you're not happy, when you're not even in the team. He didn't play, remember, against Hull. He got dropped for that game. And then, look, he was the only player. He was originally named in that squad to play Souths. Then he didn't appear. Then there was fans saying that he wasn't even sat with the squad. He was sat up with the fans in the stands. It's it's not too ludicrous to go 2 + 2 = 5. You know what I mean? It's all seems to, given the speculation beforehand and the way his form was at the end of last season, it's I think it's all adding up. But Frank Paul's not got a long future at Wigan, if at all he's got any.
I mean, going by the comments on here, Phil, Stuart Prescott says, "Shall we have a bucket collection for his ticket back?"
I don't even know if he's come back, mate. I don't know if he's come back. I should, in hindsight, I probably should have gone to the airport on Monday. We were pretty snowed under, but just seeing whether he's come back on that plane or not.
So the next two big rumours, and they're not a shock, is Bateman and Sutton. Obviously, Sutton out of contract at the end of the year. Yeah. Bateman has a clause in his contract which means that he can move to NRL in 2019, but Wigan will receive a predetermined fee, if I remember rightly. I think that's the gist of it.
A predetermined but undisclosed fee, so we don't even know what it is yet, but let's hope it's a decent amount.
I mean, anything, obviously, like you said, the players have only been back 24 hours. There's not been a press conference yet. Have you picked up anything from Australia?
I've not picked up any developments. Obviously, we saw that picture of the two of them meeting Shane Flanagan, the Cronulla coach. I spoke to Ryan Sutton just before he went, and I asked him about the NRL, and he was so guarded and saying he's just concentrating on now. Look, I know, as good as players can't always tell you everything they want to tell you, so I get that. They're not going to disclose everything, so I can understand it. Why he would be so touchy on that point, but John Bateman's an interesting one, just because of his contract. People were reporting that he's out of contract at the end of this year. He isn't, but he does have, as you said, that clause that allows him to move to the NRL if the fee is paid. I'm intrigued to know what the NRL clubs are thinking here, though. Are they going to think we might as well just hang on a year and get him for free, or are we willing to pay the fee so that we beat, maybe we can get him for a cheaper price from Canberra or Cronulla? There was a logic probably a couple of seasons ago doing the rounds that John Bateman wouldn't move to the NRL because of his young daughter.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that would stop him, because as much as he loves his million, as close as they are, they're at an age now with these things like this and FaceTime. She's probably got her own mobile phone. They've got, he'll have enough money to pay for an Easter holiday ticket and a flight over in summer holidays and spend the off season back in England. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not convinced that would stop him. And to be honest, I don't think I would particularly blame him. I mean, John Bateman always strikes you as a type of bloke who is ultra competitive, and I think for someone like him, the challenge of going to the NRL, you got to remember he's best mates with Elliot Whitehead too. I think that would appeal. I think we're going to have a battle on the hands trying to keep him at the club beyond, if not this season, then the next year. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's in the NRL next year.
It probably works well with, obviously, linked with Cronulla and that photograph of Shane Flanagan after the scrimmage session down in Cronulla last week. Paul Gallen's going to probably be retiring at the end of the year. There's a few older players in their pack that are naturally sort of probably in the last 2 years of the contract. So the one thing that could play into Wigan's favour is this money from Nuuausala potentially that could free up salary space to maybe offer Bateman an attractive contract. Yeah. But I think that challenge of the NRL is ultimately going to be one that he decides on.
It is, and I don't get that stressed and that disappointed about it as much as some people. I know I get a ticket for free. That's always the comeback that people say, yeah, you don't pay for your season ticket. But my wife and my kids have season tickets, okay? So, other journalists say it strengthens the England side having players in the NRL, and there's probably an argument to that. But also, at the end of the day, what is going to happen, so there's not much getting stressed about. But secondly, there's not that many go. Everyone said, I read a piece today saying that England's elite players are all in the NRL. Who? Apart from Sam Burgess and James Graham, maybe Hodgson. Who I don't know who else is there who would make, if you were a fan, in and ahhing about buying a season ticket, I don't know a single English player that they could bring back to Super League who would make you go and buy a season ticket, apart from James Graham, Sam Burgess. I mean, you can't really count Gareth Widdop because his family emigrated. He never played in Super League. So count them two out of it. I mean,
we're going to have got such a big production line as well. I mean, you miss them and then somebody else takes the place. And also, Joe Burgess, for example, is a perfect example. And
remember, Joe Burgess only got his chance because Pat Richards went back to the NRL, and everyone at the time was moaning that Pat Richards is going back to the NRL. How are we going to replace him? Within 2 rounds, who the hell is this Joe Burgess kid? Where's he come from?
Yeah.
Then within 18 months, you're disappointed because he's signed for the Roosters. You know, Don Manfredi's come through and Tom Davis. You're right, the production line is strong. You obviously don't want too many of Super League's best players going over there, but I don't think you're going to get to that point. How many have we lost this year? I count 1, Andre Cervello. Not having that Warrington lost a single season ticket holder apart from Andre Cervello's family because of his move to the NRL. I don't believe it at all, especially when they've signed some good players from the NRL. You know, they brought and the players who go over, not only does some of them not do well, but some of them do pretty well. Mike Cooper, for example. I mean, even Joe Wardle went all right at Newcastle. Go back in time, Brian Carney at Newcastle. But they just can't settle there, you know. They want to go over, do it for a couple of years, and then come back. Gareth Ellis, as good as he did, he came back early. Adrian Morley came back early as well as he did. I'm not sure it's as big a threat and a bigger worry as some people will have you believe. And as I say, the upside of that is, of course, it strengthens the England side as well.
I mean, one thing that Wigan have done really well and also being criticised for is signing players back. And, you know, Bateman goes, you can guarantee that Wigan will have a say on his registration in Super League, like they've done with Anthony Gelling. If they do decide to come back at Super League, Wigan will have first opportunity to get them back, you'd think. Yeah,
I know. It's a strange one. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it can be, how enforceable it is. I mean, I think the Anthony Gelling one, because let's say he has 2 years left in his deal, I think that was more to protect them. So let's say, for example, in 6 weeks' time, he couldn't sign for Leeds Rhinos for free or Sale Sharks, you know? I mean, so I think that was a sensible one. And I think everyone knew, though. I think everyone believed Gelling's motives were sincere. I'm not sure with the Bateman one. I don't know whether it's just a case of get the deal in place to come back or what. Because, I mean, what if his form nosedives and they don't particularly want him back? Or what if the salary cap's full at that time? Or what if they've got 2 gun back rowers and they'd like him back, but we've not really got the space for him? So I'd be interested to know how enforceable those measures are. And as you say, Wigan don't have to get criticised for having these old players back.
No. It's almost and I guess if you go back to when that first announcement of the Mossop's and your Tompkins and Joel Tompkins going to Union, it was almost a new initiative that was unheard of really in sport of, you know, we have the first option when they come back, and I think they would just carry that on. It's an appeasement to the fans. But I always refer back to that press conference at the time when I think it was when Joel Tompkins went to Saracens, and Ian Lenigan pointed out that the sort of the whole structure and the long-term view, and he said at that point, we will get these players back. And, you know, he's been right. He's been absolutely spot on. But then you're absolutely right in what you say. Form dips, you get them back, and they're not the players they were. Lee Mossop being the prime example. That leads me on to a nice little segue to your opinions on poor Dan Sarginson at the minute. He's been absolutely hammered for his performances. I felt sorry for him on Saturday with his, I think, you know, maybe culpable for 2 tries, seemingly got hooked off the pitch. Whether that was intentional at that time anyway, it's probably an unfortunate timing. What have you thought of Dan's performances? Only 2 games in, of course.
Yeah, he played in the friendly as well. I wasn't impressed with him at Lee, although I'll give him credit, actually. I spoke to him after that game, and then about 4 or 5 days later, I saw him, and he asked me whether he'd seen me after Lee because he was a bit dazed. He couldn't quite remember. So I think Headnot might have been to blame for his off day that day. Look, he's not been very good, as he's struggled to settle back into that side, and you give him some time, but those defensive reads, I wasn't massively against him coming back. I thought I can see why people. Yeah, I can see why he's useful. I mean, that right side with him and Davis, I think it's very industrious. I think they make a lot of meters. And I'm still, you know, I'm still of that opinion, but his form of the last 2 games has not been very good. You got to give him time to settle back in. I think that's the one thing. And the other thing I'd say about Sarge is I can't help wonder. I think centre is the one position at Wigan which is the weakest competition for places, because you've got Gildart and Sarge. I think they're going to suffer. I think they're going to. I'm a bit worried. Worried's probably too strong a word, but they've not got the competition that props up. There's good wingers being left out of this squad. There's good prop forwards and back rowers being left out of this squad. You know, I don't see any centres pushing on that door. I don't even think Liam Forsyth made the trip to down under.
No.
You know,
I mean, one
Jack
thing
Higginson
that
as well, he stayed back. You got Jack Worthington playing last year, making his debut. He's to be fair, he's a younger player than the other two I've just mentioned. So you give him a bit more time, but they've not got that competition at centres. I bet now, if Oliver Gildart was injured this weekend, Sean Wayne would either put Joe Burgess at centre or drop John Bateman to centre or Willie Isa to centre. And that's not what you want. You want it where you want it like the wing position and the prop battle where we're all contesting for those spots. And then I think if they had that at Wigan, if Zac Hardaker was here, for example.
Next question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll give you that link. I'll put it out there for you. But I think that's probably one of the weak areas for Wigan, if I'm being honest.
I mean, one thing that you commented, James Worthington, he played.
James, sorry, not Jack. Yeah.
Yeah, he played against Wakefield last year. I think he scored 2 tries, didn't he, on his debut. Now, it was interesting at the season launch when Sarginson was interviewed on stage by John Wells, and Sarginson basically said, my form has to be good because James is knocking on the door, really. So Craig Mullen seemed to have a bit of a spell at centre on Saturday as well. So I guess that there is depth, but it's not the quality in depth. And I think that age for James Worthington at this moment, it might be just a little bit too young. Yeah,
because I think he still qualifies for 19s, doesn't he? I think they're probably a year off being where they want to be for that competition that they're talking about, where you've got 3 or 4 good players who can. I mean, it's like you want it like the wing battle is now, don't you? Where really good players being left out, and it keeps them on the toes. You can see that. I
mean, Kev's just asked a question. Wouldn't Joe Burgess to centre solve several problems?
No, he was a square peg in a round hole last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think the thing with Joe Burgess is he's a fantastic winger and average centre. I think that's the honest assessment of Joe there. But then, you potentially have that problem when Dom Manfredi comes back of trying to fit him in. But let's get to that stage. Let's hope Dom gets back into that first team contention. I don't think there's any point at this moment in time trying to slot him into a team when he's not available at the moment, unfortunately.
And also when Don gets in as well, you never know who will be injured, suspended, dips in form. So you never know how those are going to come into it as well.
So you mentioned the bizarre rumour, which I saw a few weeks ago, and I didn't pay any attention to it. Where's this come from? Zac Hardaker.
His name cropped up, if you remember, when they were looking for a centre and they signed Dan Sarginson. His name was rumoured then, and you're right, it's resurfaced a few weeks ago and then again last week, and then Gary Carter from The Sun ran it again on Sunday saying it's pretty much over the line, the deal's over the line. I mean, I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if he was available if Wigan wouldn't be interested in Zac Hardaker, because we talked then about the lack of quality or depth of quality in the centres. I think Zac Hardaker's, well, we know how good he is. I don't think anyone will question how good he is. I mean, he's obviously made a huge error, massive error of judgment. I mean, what an idiot. But in terms of his talent, it's unquestionable. I think Wigan, this is speculation completely on my part, this. I think Wigan would be interested in Zac Hardaker, but he's not even had his hearing yet. So Zac Hardaker might get off, or Zac Hardaker might get a 2-year ban. Surely that's going to come into it. And let's say either way Wigan are still interested in him. Okay, Zac Hardaker's under contract with Castleford for 4 years. You've got the right as a club to terminate a contract for breach of contract, which taking drugs is one of those breaches. But it doesn't mean you have to. So this is on Castleford. He is still under contract with Cass. Whether Cass wants
that's the question I was going to ask you. Contract hasn't been terminated by Castleford at this moment in time.
I've got a journalist colleague go into the Castleford press conference tomorrow, and I've asked him to ask Darryl Powell just outright: is Zac Hardaker still contracted to Castleford?
Okay.
So hopefully he'll shed a little light on it. And if he's been released, if he's terminated his contract, which would almost seem like a premature move too, because you have to be suspended by on the UCAD rules when you fail a drugs test, obviously, but not, he's not at his hearing yet, so it would almost seem premature on Cass's part to fire him before he's had his hearing.
You're not going to get anything from Wigan before that. And,
I can't see anything. I can't see any development on this until Zac's had his hearing, and we know what's going to happen to him. if you're going to ask me whether I think Zac Hardaker will play in a Wigan shirt one day, I think he might. And you know what? I actually hope he does. I know it won't go. There'll be people up against it. I think there'll be people who won't be happy about the decision if he does come here or come to Wigan. But I think after a couple of games, he might have won them over. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, though, if it's a 2-year ban and Castleford do sack him, and then Wigan, let's say, this is hypothetical, this is not insight, but wouldn't it be like, because he would be banned for this year and next, so you're then looking at contracts for beyond 2020, you know what I mean? For 2020 onwards, and trying to balance your squad that way. So I suppose the fact that he can play fullback and play centre would work in his favour.
I mean, you can imagine probably the line from Wigan, which you won't get until, like you say, the case is heard and Zac's punishment is distributed, is Wigan are always in for the best players, whether they can get them or not is another matter. But you can imagine that there will be interest. And
also whether his personality fits in with Wigan. I mean, it's not just, Sean Wayne's always made that point, hasn't he? It's not just about ability, it's whether he thinks he'll fit in with the squad. You know, he likes that competitive spirit. He likes them being real hard trainers. And some clubs have a different philosophy. And I'm okay with that. I get that different ways to skin a cat. Every coach should have a right to have players how he wants. Some people have suggested to me that Zac Hardaker wouldn't fit in with Wayne's philosophy. I'm not convinced by that, because it's not that he's taken cocaine or alleged to have taken cocaine. I don't think that's a big an issue. It's whether he sees him as a bad apple. It's whether he sees him being as a disruptive influence or lazy or, he's taken players before. Mickey McLaurin's a prime example of a player who's had more than rough edges, and he's smoothed them out. And, he is willing to work with players like that. Zac Hardaker's obviously at the other end of his career. He's a lot older than Mickey McLaurin was. But I've only spoken to him a handful of times. He always comes across really well. But I don't think that would be a stumbling block in getting him over the line. I think if Zac Hardaker could convince Wigan, again, I'm just ruling out the reason why some people are saying it couldn't happen. But I think he's such a competitor. He's such a quality player. I think if he could convince Wigan that he made an error of judgment and he's over it, then I don't think that would be a stumbling block on a deal. I think there's just a few things in motion that need to be sorted out first, like his deal with Castleford, his doping ban. I think all of these probably need to be resolved first before we find out what's going to happen with him. But hey, I've been wrong plenty of times before.
I must apologise to everybody that's watching, because I've just realised there's a very, very poor pun on the screen. I've put Hardaker lined up for Wigan, and perhaps that, with him being banned for alleged taking of cocaine, lined up probably wasn't the best use of words. So, do you know what? Yeah, maybe not. Do you know what gets me about the Hardaker doping ban, though? I looked into this at the time. There was a misconception because he got done, because of a whole Ben Barber thing about in competition and out of competition. You've got to be so stupid to get done taking cocaine in rugby league, because in competition refers to the window just before a game. So it's like a 24, 48-hour window before a game. Everyone knows that the whole government website tells you that cocaine passes out your system. Unless you're a regular user or you take a massive amount of cocaine, it's out of your system pretty quick. So they only test for it. The drugs test that you take after a game is the only time that a rugby league player would be tested for cocaine. If a rugby league player goes out on a Sunday night, takes a lot of cocaine, and the drugs testers are in on the Monday at training, they would not even test for it. You could still get sacked or arrested. There's so many players last year that got done for that. Randy Chase.
Three players got done it, and then we have Ben Barber serving a 12 game ban as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, let's move on from Zac Hardaker and let's finish with obviously Warrington away on Friday, Phil. It's a difficult one for Wigan because we don't know how much the jet lag's going to affect them. I read that there's no training sessions for Wigan other than a team run, perhaps on Thursday, to allow the players to recover from that. How do you see that one going?
It's going to be tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've watched 2 of Warrington's 3 games this year, and I've not been blown away by them whatsoever. I was down there today, actually. I spoke to Dom Crosby. It's good to see him. That was a positive for me for Friday, seeing him back out there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Played really well, too. But I've not been blown away by Warrington at all. But you just can't help wonder, Friday night game at their place, 6 days after they've played in Sydney, 4 days after they've landed back from Australia, it's bound to have an impact. I know this year a lot of fans, and myself as well, have wanted to see Wigan improve. And I think we've seen that in the two Super League games. Salford and Hull, I thought they showed some good stuff. I think this game is more like that Widnes one after the World Club Challenge. They just need to get those 2 points. I don't care how ugly this one is. Wigan, I think, would be satisfied with the win. And I think it'll be a tough one. And in a weird way, these people like Wayne, Mark Bitkin, it's like Easter. You never hear them moan about it because we kind of like the challenge in a bit of a warped way. Kind of like get off on it. And I think they'll be the same this week. I think they'll have them firing. And I think they'll probably be a bit dusty, a bit jaded. But it's for that reason, for me, it's not that I think Warrington will win. I just think it's a bit of a leveler. I think if this was next week or the week after, I'd say Wigan were the favourites by 8 points. I think the travel factor with this has probably made it a bit of a coin toss game. And it's going to be an interesting one for sure.
So on Thursday night, we've got a preview show on here with it's the first time really that we've pulled in away fans. So I've got two Warrington fans joining me for 15 minutes, and then Matt and Mark, the Wigan fans, joining me to go through that. So if I was to sort of, you said 8 points if this was played next week.
I think if this was next week, Wigan would be favourites by 8-10 points, given the form that we've seen so far in Super League.
It's certainly going to be an interesting one. You can imagine it's going to be pretty much a similar team to the one that played against Hull, with the exception of maybe Bateman and Burgess coming back in. I think the only player the sad thing for me about this Warrington game was the knock-on effect was Wayne rested up a lot of his frontline players in that Souths game. I was watching the last 20 minutes with that, and you were like, oh, please just put on that left edge just to get this bloody win. And that was the annoying thing for me. But you could understand the logic why they were doing that. The only thing I'd say about this Warrington side is they are punching below weight, aren't they? Absolutely.
There's no way. I've got friends who are Warrington fans, and they're convinced for him for another struggle of the season. I don't think they are. I think they've got too many good players. Chris Hill, Don Crosby, the back row is Murdoch Masilla. Ben Curry in the back row. I think they just need time for the new halfback to gel, and I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be a force. Having said that, I wish this game was played, if not Sunday, then next week, and I think Wigan would have won quite comfortably. I
think it's probably a bit, perhaps. I mean, it's hard to say this, but it's probably a bigger game for Warrington than it is for Wigan at this moment in time because of the results that they've had. They got through against Widnes, but it wasn't the most convincing performances against Widnes. So I think there's a lot of internal pressure on Warrington, I would say, on Friday.
I put it there though. If Frank Paul's not in the country, so not in the team, the only player for me from that Souths game who I think might be nudging a bit closer was Roman Navarrete. I mean, that was the only positive, not the only positive. I'm not being critical of the fringe players who came in, by the way. It's just obvious that the combinations aren't as slick as had it been Farrell, Gildart, Williams, Burgess, But Roman Navarrete, for me, I thought he was really, really ripped in. I saw him in a couple of friendlies too, and I thought he went well then. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Wigan team in a Super League game.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to the Swinton friendly and he rips it up in that game, and I think he earned himself a place on the plane, because I don't think up until that point he was going, and I think the same with Craig Mullen, Josh Ganson. They got themselves on that plane by the performances in the Swinton game. Contrast that with Liam Forsyth. Also played in the Swinton game, didn't go over to Australia, I don't think. Well, he certainly didn't play in Australia. I don't think he was part of the 27-man team. So, Navarrete I thought was awesome on Saturday compared to, like you said, you change the team so much. There's not going to be the fluidity. And it's probably a stage for forwards where you can make meters to probably impress a bit more than backs. But I hope he gets his opportunity potentially off the bench. But there's going to be two good players at least miss out of this squad on Friday night from the 19-man squad. And that's the stage that we're getting to now with people coming back from injury, which is a nice problem to have, I guess, for Sean Wayne. He's not had that too many times over the past few years.
Yeah, I can't